All right, so picture this. You're watching your favorite movie, but wait, there's no music. Would it even be the same? Today, we're going deep on how film scores shape our whole movie experience.
Music, it's really like this secret ingredient. I mean, it can set the tone, it can yank on our heartstrings, even add layers to the story we don't even realize.
It's true. We're going to talk about some of the biggest names out there, John Williams, Hans Zimmer. These guys, they're practically wizards with sound.
Yeah, they know exactly how to use music to, I don't know, make us feel exactly what the director wants us to feel.
Okay, so let's break this down a bit. I mean, we all know music can make us feel happy or sad, but what's actually happening in a film when that music kicks in?
Well, think about a movie like Schindler's List, right? That violin, it's like this punch to the gut. Instantly you're in that world, that sorrow.
It's so powerful.
And it's not just the notes, it's how it's played. The slow tempo, that minor key, it just screams sadness.
Right, and then you have something like The Godfather. That music is almost like a character itself, dark and gloomy.
Exactly. The Godfather theme, it's minor key too, but then they use all those low brass instruments. It gives it this weight, this feeling of like inescapable fate.
So it's not just matching the mood. They're using these musical tricks to actually create those feelings in us.
That's it. You change the tempo, suddenly a scene feels tense, slow it down, maybe it's peaceful, or yeah, melancholy like you said. Then you've got the dynamics, how loud or soft things are.
Right, like a big crescendo can make you jump out of your skin.
Exactly. But then you slowly fade the music out. Maybe it makes you think about what a character's feeling inside. There's so much going on under the surface.
It's like a whole other language on top of the dialogue, the acting, everything.
Yeah, it is.
And speaking of layering, I'm thinking of a film like Inception. That score, it's so complex, like it's bending time or something.
Oh man, Hans Zimmer, he is the master of those mind-bending soundscapes. He uses a technique called shepherd tones. It creates this illusion, like the melody's always rising or falling, you can never quite tell.
That's so cool.
And he layers all these instruments, sounds, everything to really disorient you, which is perfect for a movie about dreams and messing with reality.
Right, so it's not just setting the mood, it's reflecting the whole idea of the film. Like, the music itself is another character.
Absolutely. And when that musical idea is really strong, you get those soundtracks that are totally inseparable from the film, iconic, like a sonic fingerprint.
Like Titanic, My Heart Will Go On. I mean, that song, it took on a life of its own.
Exactly. It went way beyond the movie, became part of pop culture. And then you have soundtracks that just break all the rules, like Quentin Tarantino, what he does with music in his films.
Tarantino soundtracks are wild. Like
Yeah.
in Pulp Fiction, you've got surf rock, soul, funk, all smashed together. What's he doing there?
Well, he's using that music to build a very specific atmosphere, like Pulp Fiction, all that violence, the dark humor, but the music gives it this layer of irony, makes it cool. He creates a world that's both familiar but also unsettling, draws you right in.
It's like the music is a key to unlock the whole movie.
You got it.
And sometimes, it can even make what you're seeing on screen even more powerful, like Mad Max. Fury Road, that score is pure energy, it's relentless.
Mad Max, yeah, that's a great example. That pounding, percussive music, plus the engines roaring, the metal, it's like an assault on your senses, totally matches that chaotic world.
So we've talked about how music sets the mood, how it reflects themes, even amplifies what we see. But can you have too much of a good thing? Can a score ever be too much, like overpower the film?
Oh yeah, for sure. Sometimes the score tries to do too much. It's like it's yelling at you what to feel instead of letting you experience it for yourself.
Okay, so like it's telling you what to feel instead of showing you. Any examples come to mind?
Well, some people might say those big superhero movies, they tend to go overboard with the music, even in quiet moments. It's just constant strings and horns. Like, they're trying to force an emotional response that isn't there naturally.
Interesting. It's like the music's fighting with the story instead of working with it.
Right, and that can be exhausting for the audience. Instead of being drawn in, you just check out.
So how do composers find that balance? Knowing when to lay back and let the visuals, the silence, do the talking.
It's tough. It takes a lot of skill. Sometimes one single note placed just right can be way more powerful than a whole orchestra blasting away.
Like in Jaws or Psycho. Those movies, a few notes is all it takes to scare the pants off you.
Exactly. Those are classics for a reason. They use music so carefully so when it hits hard. The silence in between, that's what builds the tension, the unease.
Like they're messing with your head, using silence to make you nervous, then bam, the music comes in. It's not just about the music itself, it's how it works with the silence around it.
That's it, the interplay between the two, that's crucial.
So who are some of the composers who really get that? The masters of music and silence.
Well, Ennio Morricone, he was brilliant at creating atmosphere. His scores would often have these long stretches of quiet. Then suddenly, this burst of sound kept you on your toes.
Unpredictable.
Exactly. And then you have someone like Alfred Hitchcock. He worked a lot with composer Bernard Herrmann. They made some of the most suspenseful film music ever.
Oh, man. Hitchcock's films, the music is always so creepy. Like Psycho?
Oh, yeah. Herrmann's score for Psycho, that's the definition of psychological horror. Those violins in the shower scene, everyone remembers that. But what's really brilliant is how he uses silence throughout the whole film. Keeps you on edge. You know something bad is going to happen.
It's like the silence is making your own anxieties worse, like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Exactly, and that's the power of silence in film. It can be just as powerful as the music itself, even more so sometimes.
So we've talked about balance, the interplay of music and silence, even how different composers have their own style. But how has technology changed things? I mean, has it changed much since the days of, like, Morricone and Herrmann?
Oh, it's completely different now. Technology has revolutionized everything about how film scores are made, recorded, even how we hear them. Back in the old days, you needed a full orchestra to play your score.
That must have been expensive.
Oh yeah, and time-consuming. But now, composers have all these digital tools, instruments, software. They can create any sound you can imagine right in their studio.
That's got to be amazing for them, all those possibilities.
It is. It's like having a whole orchestra in a computer. And it means composers can try things that were impossible before, create these crazy soundscapes.
And I bet it's easier to make the music fit perfectly with what's happening on screen.
For sure. With digital tech, you can tweak the music to sync up perfectly with the visuals. It's seamless.
So the music becomes part of the visuals, adding even more to the story.
Exactly. And as tech keeps getting better, who knows what we'll be able to do with film music in the future.
Well, on that note, I think we need to take a closer look at some of those composers who really paved the way, starting with the king of the spaghetti western, Ennio Morricone.
Sounds good. Let's dive in. So Morricone, this guy, he was all about atmosphere, creating tension. His music, it was often like really stripped down, simple melodies repeating over and over, gave you this feeling of, I don't know, like something bad was going to happen.
Yeah, like in the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? It's so sparse, but man, it's effective.
Exactly. And he'd use all these weird instruments, whistling, electric guitars, even like animal noises sometimes. Created this sound that was, well, it was both haunting and memorable. You couldn't forget it if you tried.
He was a rule breaker for sure, not afraid to try anything.
Right, a true innovator. And you can hear his influence all over film music, even today. Tarantino, for example, using whistling in Kill Bill, that's a direct nod to Morricone.
Totally. It's like passing the torch, musically speaking.
Yeah, that's what makes film music so cool, you know? It's always building on what came before.
All right, so we've talked about Morricone's like unique sound, how he builds tension. But what about John Williams? This guy, he's like the king of the blockbuster score.
John Williams, man, he's all about melody, orchestration, just massive epic sound. His themes, they just capture the whole feeling of the movie perfectly. Star Wars, that theme, instant chills, adventure, excitement, it's all right there.
It's like he's painting these pictures in your mind with the music.
Exactly, and he's so good at using the music to really dig into the characters, make those big emotional moments hit even harder. E.T., the music in that, it's just heartbreaking, so beautiful.
You really feel what those characters are going through, all thanks to the music.
That's right. Williams, he's a master storyteller. He uses music to connect with the audience on this, like, deep, emotional level.
All right, so we've got the spaghetti western master, the blockbuster king, but now we got to talk about the guy who took us to Middle-earth. Howard Shore, his score for Lord of the Rings, it's like a symphony in itself.
Lord of the Rings, that score, it's massive, right? Captures everything about Tolkien's world, the beauty, the darkness, everything. Shore, he used so many different instruments, orchestra, harps, even a didgeridoo. Created this sound that was both, like, epic and really intimate at the same time.
When I saw those movies, I felt like I was right there in Middle-earth. The music was a huge part of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sure, he didn't just write music for the films. He created whole musical languages for the different cultures in Middle-earth. So like the Shire, it has this light, happy sound, reflects how peaceful it is. But then Mordor, the music there is dark, heavy, just like the evil that lives there.
He built a whole sonic world. It's amazing.
It is. Shows you how talented he is, how well he understood Tolkien's world. He didn't just score the film, he scored an entire universe.
Okay, so we've covered some of the biggest names in film music, the legends. But what about the future? What kind of challenges or opportunities are out there for composers now?
Well, one of the biggest things now is, well, the pressure to make music that's popular, commercial. With all these streaming services, less people going to theaters, studios are really focused on making movies that everyone will like.
So that means composers are having to write music that's, I don't know, less unique,
Yeah.
more generic.
Sometimes, yeah. But there are still plenty of chances to experiment, to do something different. And with all these independent films being made, there's a real need for music that stands out, that's not just the same old thing.
That's good to hear. I mean, film music, it's such a powerful art form. It would be sad to see it lose what makes it special.
Right. I think the future is still really bright, there's tons of talented people out there, they're pushing boundaries, doing really cool things.
Well, I'm definitely excited to see what comes next. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I think we should circle back to those legends we were talking about. Ennio Morricone. Let's start with him again. What made his music so, so distinct, so unforgettable?
Morricone, he was amazing at creating atmosphere, tension. He often used this really minimal style, simple melodies that would repeat, It created this feeling of unease, like you were always waiting for something to happen.
Yeah, I remember feeling that unease in the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
The music is so minimal, but it totally works.
Exactly. And he'd throw in these unexpected instruments, like whistling or electric guitars, even animal sounds. It created the sound that was, it was both haunting and totally unique.
He wasn't afraid to try anything new.
No way. He was a true innovator, and you can hear his influence in so many other films. Like, think about how Tarantino uses whistling in Kill Bill. That's totally a tribute to Morricone.
Oh yeah, I see it. It's like a musical family tree, Each generation of composers builds on what came before.
That's a good way to put it. And that's what makes film music so interesting. It's always evolving.
Okay, so we talked about Morricone, his unique sound, how he builds tension. But what about John Williams? What are some of the things that make his scores so iconic?
John Williams, he's a master of melody and orchestration. His scores, they're huge, epic, And his themes, they just perfectly capture the feeling of the films he's worked on, like Star Wars, that theme, you hear it, and you're instantly transported to that world.
It's like he's using music to create these whole worlds in your mind.
Exactly, and he's so good at using music to develop the characters, to make those big emotional moments really land. Like in E.T., the music is so heartwarming and moving, it just perfectly captures the bond between Elliot and the alien.
The music makes you feel what they're feeling. It's incredible.
Right. Williams, he's a master storyteller. He knows how to use music to connect with the audience on this really deep level.
Okay, so we've covered the master of the Western, the king of the blockbuster, but we can't forget about the composer who took us to Middle-earth. Howard Shore's score for The Lord of the Rings, it's like a whole symphony in itself. What are some of the things that made his work on those films so immersive?
Howard Shore's Lord of the Rings score, that's like a landmark achievement. It's this huge tapestry of sound, and it captures everything about Tolkien's world. The grandeur, the beauty, the darkness, it's all there. He used so many different instruments, a full orchestra, Celtic harps, even a didgeridoo. It creates this sound that's both epic and really intimate at the same time.
I remember watching those films and just feeling completely transported to Middle-earth.
Yeah.
The music was a huge part of that.
Absolutely. Sure, he didn't just write music for the films, he actually created whole musical languages for the different cultures of Middle-earth. Like the Shire, for example. It has this light, airy sound, It reflects how peaceful and idyllic the Shire is. But then Mordor, the music there is dark, oppressive, just like the evil that dwells there.
It's incredible how he created this whole musical world, all these different sounds for different places.
It really is. It just shows how skilled he is as a composer and how well he understood Tolkien's world. He didn't just score the film, he scored a whole universe.
Okay, so we've explored the legacies of these amazing composers, the ones who really shaped the sound of cinema for generations. But now I'm curious, what about the future of film music? What are some of the challenges and opportunities that composers are facing today?
One of the biggest challenges is definitely the pressure to create music that's, commercially successful. With streaming services and fewer people going to theaters, studios are really focused on making films that appeal to the widest possible audience.
So that means composers might be asked to write music that's more generic, less unique.
Yeah, sometimes. But there are still a lot of opportunities for composers to experiment and push the boundaries of what film music can be. And with the rise of independent cinema, there's actually a growing demand for music that's different, that stands out.
That's good to hear. Film music is such a powerful art form, it would be a shame to see it become too predictable.
I agree, and I think the future of film music is really exciting. There are so many talented composers out there who are passionate about their craft, and they're always exploring new sounds and ideas.
I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with next. But before we wrap up our deep dive into the world of film music, I have one last question for you. If you could give our listeners one piece of advice, one thing to keep in mind as they explore film music on their own, what would it be?
I would say be open-minded, Explore different genres, different styles of music. Don't be afraid to listen to something that you might not normally listen to. You never know what you might discover.
That's great advice. It's like exploring a new country.
Right?
The more you see and experience, the more you learn and grow.
Exactly. And the same goes for music. So go out there and explore the incredible world of film scores. You won't regret it.
And on that note, I think it's time for us to cue up our favorite soundtracks and let the music take us on a journey. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of film music.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. We've been kind of building this sonic toolkit, and now we get to go out and use it to discover all this incredible music. That's the cool thing about film music. It can lead you to all these other kinds of music. You might start with, Star Wars, and then suddenly you're into opera or electronic stuff.
It's true. You never know where it might take you. And speaking of journeys, I keep thinking about Howard Shore and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
That score is just so massive, so detailed. Did he, approach those films differently than, say, a smaller, more intimate drama?
Oh, for sure. Lord of the Rings, that was a huge project, right? Sure, he spent years, literally years, researching Tolkien's world, languages, the history, the cultures, all of it. He wanted the music to really feel like it belonged in that world.
It's like he was trying to create this whole sonic world, just as detailed as the books, the movie.
Right. He wrote over 10 hours of music for those 3 films.
Yeah.
Used all kinds of instruments, a full orchestra, Celtic harps. He even used a didgeridoo. And each character, each place, each culture, it got its own musical theme.
It's crazy how much work went into that.
Yeah, it was a huge undertaking, but it paid off big time. That score, it's a big part of what makes those films so special, so immersive.
It's true. And it's not just, fantasy epics that can benefit from a great score. Even smaller, quieter films that can be elevated by the right music. I'm thinking of Moonlight, that score. It's so beautiful, kind of haunting.
Moonlight, yeah. Nicholas Britell, the composer, he did a fantastic job with that score. It's minimal, it's understated, but it really gets to the heart of those characters, their emotions.
It's like the music is telling us things that the characters can't say out loud.
Exactly. That's what film music can do. It can get to those deeper levels, those unspoken things that are happening in the story.
So we've talked a lot about the technical side of film music, the history, how it's evolved, all that. But I think the most important thing is that emotional connection, how music can make us feel things in a way nothing else can.
You got it. Film music, it's the language of emotions, pure and simple. It speaks to us in a way that goes beyond words, it goes right to the heart.
And it can connect people from anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter what language you speak, what your background is, everyone feels music. Think about Cinema Paradiso. That score, it's so beautiful, so nostalgic, and it's touched people all over the world.
Exactly. Music is a universal language. It connects us on this really basic human level. And when you combine that with the power of film, well, that's where the magic happens.
It's like the perfect partnership, music and film. Each one makes the other even stronger. They create something really special together. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this.
Yeah.
Next time you're watching a movie, don't just hear the music, really listen to it. Think about how it makes you feel, how it adds to the story, how it changes your whole experience.
Because behind every great film, there's a great score waiting to be heard.
That's a great way to put it. And hey, maybe this deep dive has inspired you to go out and discover some new music. Until next time, keep exploring, keep listening, and let the music take you wherever it wants to go.